everybody, and welcome back to the EDHTakes podcast. I'm Elijah Samuelson.
And I'm Spencer Cook.
And we have returned, once again, the return of EDHTakes.
From the depths of, Mordor.
of despair.
Yeah.
And slaving away in the window mines this summer. That's what I've been doing. My new job. But anyways, we are here today to talk about the idea of optimization in Commander. Mm-hmm. And if we've just gone too dang far sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, there's a lot of, I guess not to jump ahead too far, but in general, there's a lot of, especially online, a lot of people that will make their entire, series of, videos or podcasts or something about optimization. You got to go fast now, right? And I feel like that kind of contributes to what we see in our own lives, our own, play groups playing Commander, people at the game store, people we play with. It seems like there's some sort of... We've definitely come a long way from 2015, pre-cons. And at what point is it too far? Have we reached that point yet? Let's talk about it.
Yeah, there's this need for continuous improvement always, and it's a very human thing. We want to get better, we want to do better. We're not here to say there's anything really that wrong with this, but more that it's not always healthy to be completely obsessed with it.
Yeah, have Magic players turned into a sort of Phyrexian-like creature where they just need to constantly graft off their skin and
honestly,
and graft on the most optimal thing possible for their Commander decks.
Right. Yeah, so pretty much the idea today is we wanted to refute, in a way, some common pieces of advice that are touted as the main ways to optimize, and whether or not those are always necessarily correct, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of people, not to say that we are immune to it, but a lot of people will, focus videos on optimization. I mean, we've talked about, we want to make good decks. We want to make decks better. We want to play better, right? Everyone wants that. But, yeah, some people give out heuristics, and they're just a little bit flawed, or maybe they go too far with them. So, I guess to start, what are some of the common pieces of advice that people give out for optimizing decks?
Yeah, so one of the first things, like you were talking about, heuristics people use, is it's pretty common for content creators to put forward a deck building template. We even kind of did our own version of this in an episode, just our deck building process, kind of how we go about looking at this. And I think the important thing when you have the template or you're going to give deck building advice is to realize that what works for you doesn't necessarily work for other people, and it's not really like you're objectively correct doing one way or another.
You have to realize that it's your deck building template, not everybody's deck building template. And usually a deck building template is not the end all be all of correct or optimal deck building. It's just, like you were saying, like kind of a heuristic. It's kind of deck building on easy mode, I would even say, because you're really just like, you're choosing, okay, I want to have 10 removal spells or whatever, and I'm not going to take into account how many my deck actually might need based on like the strategy or other, synergies inside it. You're just kind of like, this is the number because this is the template.
Yeah, or if you had several different decks of the same color combination, and every time you're going through and making a mana base, you're just, I copy and paste from this to this. Same color deck, same mana base.
Yeah, but it's not that simple all the time, right?
Yeah, it's not. And I think every deck, people tend to build decks in a certain way most of the time. If you look at the average Commander player, they kind of prefer playing certain types of cards, certain types of decks. So their decks will usually kind of have a similar vein to them. Mm-hmm. But every Commander deck is different. Yes. And I think they sort of should be different, and that's okay.
Yep, and one of the problems with this kind of deck building template is when someone will be looking to give advice to somebody else. So, for example, you've got like a newer player. It doesn't have to be a newer player, but like someone like in a pod will like suggest something to another player and be like, "Oh, you need to run more removal, or you don't have enough card draw, or something." They'll be using their own like template without really considering what the deck might need. They're just kind of like they just, like, the neurons are firing in their brain, like, connecting, oh, okay, you didn't draw enough cards, have you met the template? No, you need more. It's like, there's more to it than that, is all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, generally, and we've probably talked about this before on the podcast, I think it's just generally better to give people the benefit of the doubt that they've thought about certain things and think that they have considered that and maybe decided not to do it, or maybe try phrasing it in the way of, have you considered this?
Yeah, better.
And then, like, kind of ask, and then maybe they'll be like, well, yes, I have considered that.
This is what I like to do. How have you found your choices?
Yeah, how does this work out for you?
Yeah.
Or try to not do it in, like, a condescending or a disparaging way, like, oh, is that working out for you, really? Like,
but yeah,
or like, oh yeah, how's that going? Like, is it working? Because if it's working, who are you to say that it's wrong?
I think you and I have had situations where, you've either lent someone a deck, or they've played your deck, or they've seen your deck play, and maybe they even won the game with your deck, but they haven't, like, they don't know the ins and outs of it, like, they don't know everything about it, but they'll just, like, look at the deck list at a glance and be like, gotta have more board wipes, you gotta have 2 more, I like to play 5, or something, without even, like, without the sufficient knowledge to say that. It feels people are too quick to suggest things.
Oh my god, yeah, I lent a friend one of my decks recently, and it was my Shadrick Silverquill deck, which is kind of playing a lot of more expensive, like, kind of cards that I wouldn't play in other decks, but I think it's a pretty good deck, and it's kind of a mid to lower power deck, and I lent him my deck, and he didn't mulligan, but he got kind of stuck on, man, like, he didn't, like, have a lot of ramp and didn't do a lot of stuff in the early game, and at the end of the game, I remember him complaining to me, he's like, it seems like your curve's really high, and I'm thinking, like, well, you mulliganed into, like, no ramp, and I think there was a point in the game where he played a Dark Ritual, but this isn't good, I accidentally caught a glimpse of his hand at one point in that game.
Yeah.
And he could have used the Dark Ritual to play Shadrix on turn 3.
And then start drawing cards every turn.
But he didn't. And then he complained about the curve being too high. It's like, well, yeah, I'm sorry, I can't help you. You had one experience, and, it's, that was your experience with it, but...
Yeah.
Exactly. You can't say off of just one... I think we've lent each other decks before where just, like, things don't go very well, or, like, just nothing happened, like, you just don't draw into stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember playing, I think, your Gira deck one game, and just having, like, the complete, like, just getting... I had to mold, like, 6 or 5 or something, and I just was getting, like, kind of shat on, but then despite that, I still won the game. So if I had been like, oh, Spencer, it doesn't seem like you have enough ramp or enough lands in your deck, and then still, like, it's like...
Well, you still win.
It's like, what's it...
Sounds like there was enough for that game.
Yeah,
maybe,
it sounds
right?
like it was a pretty good deck if it won despite that. Like,
yeah.
But,
why don't we move on from that? We've been talking about that a lot. The other, like, on the same level of that, maybe more specifically, people will say you need to run more interaction. That's one of the biggest things that people will suggest.
Right, because I think people have put forward, correctly so, that the format is in a lot of ways getting faster.
There's a lot more need to kill creatures and enchantments.
Yeah, and so how do you deal with that? Well, you can do one of two things typically. Is you can either build a faster deck yourself, which most people, I think, don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm. Probably not the best solution, right?
Or you can run more interaction.
Yeah.
And so that's what people say. You need to run more interaction. You need to have, like, 10 pieces of removal. You need to
15.
have 5 board wipes. And
it's like...
Yeah. You need to run Graveyard Hate, too.
You need to have... Every deck needs to have X number of Graveyard Hate cards.
And people talk about Graveyard Hate specifically, like, it's just this total, like, oh, it just completely... It ruins a whole deck. Like, it hoses them completely.
I think I remember... sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think I remember... who was it?
Alex from the Spike Feeders.
Yeah. He was talking about the invocations, the green elemental...
Yeah, Endurance.
And he's like, Solitude answers a creature. Endurance answers a game plan. And it's just like, he said it in a way that kind of made me feel like he was kind of high on his own fumes a little bit. And it's like, oh, God.
But really, Graveyard Hate specifically, like, spot removal and board wipes, those are very good things to run, and you're not usually worse off for playing them, but, like, too much Graveyard Hate, most Graveyard Hate cards really are, like, one for zeros.
Yeah.
Unless you're literally on the stack, like somebody goes to animate dead something, and in response you play a Graveyard Hate card, then you're kind of one for one on them.
Yeah, or if it's like a cantrip, I get like Graveyard Hate card, then it's there's a couple black things that do that. There's like the artifacts, the ones that aren't, people will recommend you play Ashnod's Altar, or not Ashnod's Altar, the stupid zero drop, whatever.
Yeah, Tormod's Crypt.
Tormod's Crypt, sorry. People will recommend you play that. I would recommend, that might be one of the strongest cards I would the cards that I would most strongly advise against playing. I think it's pretty awful. I also, maybe this is a bit of a hot take too, I also don't really like the artifacts that will, like the Relic of Progenituses, and there's like several of them that do slightly different things, but I don't really like any of them that much. They're not the worst cards in the world because they replace themselves, but I'd rather run other ways to do that.
Yeah, because Graveyard Hate is just, occasionally you get creatures that have some form of Graveyard Hate staple on it.
Those are better.
Those are okay, because they're at least, it's a creature, or it has some other ability on it, and that's awesome. Like, if you can find a way to run, like, a Graveyard Hate piece that does something proactive as well, I love that. That's awesome. Like Skoos.
Yeah, Skoos
that thing just gets big, and it gains you life. So.
Lion Sash, the new white Skoos.
Yeah.
I haven't had super success with it, but I do like it a lot.
Yeah, at least you always know the bare minimum that card's going to do.
So I would love that. I would think that my problem with that card is I wish that it was an like an equipment right away, because I feel like I want to protect it by putting it on something. Mm-hmm. But because like I want it to be protected from like board wipes and stuff, but I don't want to spend that extra. Was it 1 or 2 mana? 1 mana?
It's 2, yeah.
Yeah, to equip it to something, and it's kind of a waste if I don't end up using it. But that's a little digression, not super important. It's still a really cool card.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like you were saying, Eli, Graveyard Hate, really, you need to kind of do something in response to something to actually be like, kind of getting a 1-for-1, right?
Yeah, some form of at least card parity.
Yeah, but like you're really going parity with one person. I guess you could technically stop like multiple things with one card.
Well, yeah, and that's like that parity with one person as far as card advantage. That's where we talked about our things, and that's one thing that I've really got spot removal in Commander, like running too much spot removal. I am really not very high on that idea.
Yeah, well, it's a bit weird because we've talked a lot about how we're lower on spot removal than a lot of players. Not so low that it's like bad, but like we'll play the best ones, right? Like you and I think are both like we wouldn't most of the time would not cut like a Swords to Plowshares, right? Like that's just like so efficient and great,
right?
But like I'm not in the market for playing like Assassin's Trophy in every deck that that the colors can play it. I mean, it's a good card, but I don't need that many copies of it, I think.
Yeah, I'll play spot removal, but whenever I have it in my hand, I am really doing everything I can to avoid having to be the person that uses it.
When you need it, right? But like I guess on the topic of this of this podcast, people will see a game where like the table doesn't draw enough spot removal and take that to mean that the table isn't playing enough spot removal.
Right.
There's variance in Commander. Like I might have 6-7 good pieces of spot removal, just didn't see any in the first, it's like, what am I supposed to mulligan to spot removal? I don't think that's really what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, exactly. Like you could be running that template amount of 10 and still not draw any the entire game, and you're fine. But I think what happens, and one of the things that made us want to talk about this subject, is you'll see what happens a lot of time in Commander where somebody loses their fair share of games, or they lose to a specific card or some kind of interaction that they're maybe not used to, and they'll go to the deck and try and fix that, try and like turn the knobs a little bit.
Immediately. So even after one game or 2 games that same night, they'll be like right after the game ends, take out 2 cards in the deck, like, oh, I gotta put more removal in here, or I gotta put more Graveyard Hate in here because I lost to a graveyard deck.
Yeah, and I think we talked about on our building for the meta kind of episode how like you can't build your deck to be good against everything. Mm-hmm. You just really can't. So I think there's certain things that, like we talked about on that episode, that you're always going to see and that you're never like wrong for having. And that's what you have to try to do, is just like be the most well-rounded possible. And take like, I played a game with my Bruce and Elena deck a while ago where somebody had a I think it was a Carador deck with Spore Frog. And that's a pretty bad card for me to see out of that deck. I think I still somehow ended up getting around it, but that's like, I can't build my deck and be like, I'm not going to run a card like Skullcrack or something to prevent fogs.
Yeah.
And there are better versions of that. There are cards I could run
insult
that.
to injury, right?
Yeah, there's something like that, or like that does prevention of combat damage. But I'm not going to build around that.
Yeah, you're like, I think that deck has Tear of the Peaks, is that correct?
Yeah, I have other ways to win.
It's important to have other ways to win, but you're not going to be like, oh, I didn't get to my Tear of the Peaks. I need a second Tear of the Peaks effect in my deck in case this happens. Like, no, your one is probably enough. Like, you don't need to overcorrect.
Yeah, or like if my, probably my strongest deck, my Gerard deck, if it faces against a strong graveyard hate card like Dauthi Voidwalker or Rest in Peace, there's not a lot I can do about that.
Yeah, I don't know if I think you technically have like a couple of removal spells that can get rid of those kinds of things, but like what are you going to do? Just like change your entire game plan of your deck because 2 cards in the format exist? Like I'm not playing around. I'm not playing only basics in all my decks because back to basics exists, right? I mean, you could, but like I don't think it's really necessary.
Yeah, it's like somebody blood moons you in a game, and all of a sudden you're like, oh man, I got to take out all these non-basic lands for my really tight mana base, and like we talk about the amazing basic land and everything, and maybe sometimes you have gone a little bit overboard, but if things are generally working out for you, and I think that's the important thing to realize is, I think players will lose a game or two, or even have like a whole night of losing, and think like, man, my deck did something wrong, because I'm not a bad player. I wouldn't make mistakes. Like I didn't do anything wrong. It's my deck, It's
and this isn't to say that there aren't like improvements that you could actually make correctly, right? This is just saying that sometimes I think players are too quick to make changes, probably due to some like emotional like problems they had with the game, like they had a really rough game and they just like they just too what's the word I'm looking for? Make very snap decision there, and just like people are too quick to just like overhaul a deck. Very impulsive, yeah. And that's and you might even be like, even though your goal is to like optimize, you might even be losing equity, winning percent just to increase your percent in some other area, right? Like you might be losing, taking out these 2 cards, add 2 other cards might help you in this area, but you lose percent in this area.
Yeah, something I've been doing lately, I've been making a lot of changes to my Tajik deck because it's a very low to the ground kind of hate bearer based deck. And what I've been doing is trying to I had 1 or 2 games recently where I just didn't have that much to do in the late game, and it's like a very low curve, and I do have adequate amounts of card advantage and things to do, and usually it plays very well, but also I was trying to make it play better for the late game because I've been trying to play that deck differently. If this makes sense, usually how the deck plays is I would try and take one person out super early, and then I can usually, if I take players out one at a time, that deck, the way the deck is built, can work pretty well. It can win its share of games. But I have been trying, I like that deck and I like to play it, but when I'm playing with my very good friends, I don't want to play like that, where I'm just taking out one of them super early and they have to sit around and watch the game. Not that they would be very upset about that, I think, but I've been trying to change my play style a little bit for that, and so I've been shifting out a couple of cards and kind of upping the curve, and I'm really wondering, it's not so much that I'm trying to optimize it. It might even be that I'm trying to de-optimize in a way, but I'm really wondering, have I messed it up by trying to make this change of making it more long?
Yeah. Well, that's why I would recommend this to people. I like whenever if I host a deck list on a website, I like making a change log so that if I ever feel like I've lost something in a deck, like I've lost the point of the deck or something, I could literally go back to a previous version of the deck by just following the change log and being like, you know what, let's go back to 2019 here with this deck and try this out and see how I feel. So I like that. Yeah,
that's a good idea. Usually when I do that with my paper decks, I still try, and if I have room in the deck box or something, I'll keep the cards that I took out in case I decide that I want to switch something back, because you can always try stuff out. I think we were talking about somebody changing up their deck after the game. maybe that's not like the worst idea if you're just like doing it to like give it a try and like you are planning on switching back. But I think like the idea that like you have, it's this weird, like we talked about the locus of control in a previous episode, how like oftentimes it seems like Magic players or just people in general, like if something goes wrong in a game, you'll make all these claims about how, oh, I had bad luck, I got mana screwed, like if the turn order had been different, if this had happened, like you'll have this very external locus of control where you feel like you're being, the things that happen to you are external forces.
Yep.
But then it's weird, like with your deck building, it's almost like, oh, if this went wrong in this game, I can control that by changing my deck.
It's like, I got unlucky this game, let me fix that by changing my deck. Well, you still maybe have gotten unlucky. Like, if you change your deck and you still get unlucky, the same result happens.
Yeah, it's right? Like, oh, I didn't draw enough lands in my 36 land deck, let me put that to 38. Which, I mean, I run 38 in most decks, but like most people shouldn't have to do that or like feel like that was the problem if they didn't draw enough lands one game. Unless they're in some like absurd low number. Yeah,
it's, I don't know. Stats are very unintuitive to most people. All people, I guess. Stats are not intuitive.
Yeah.
Statistics. Well, the other, just to move on a little bit, I mean, we talked about, like, that was interaction, board wipes, graveyard hate stuff. There's one more very common thing people will tell you, and that's that you need to play more ramp. You don't, like you even mentioned this talking about your Shadrix deck. Your curve's too high. You don't play enough ramp, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And like, does every deck really need 10 plus pieces of ramp? Because going back to talking about that template, it feels like people recommend a certain number of ramp pieces, and if you're not at that number, no matter what the deck is, they'll recommend you got to play more ramp. I think you were you did like you had PJ play one of your Tajik deck, right? And he won the game, drew a ramp piece, but he still had not enough ramp in the deck, even though you had more mana than the other players.
Yeah, he won the game very handily and had more mana than each other opponent.
It was like, we got to find a way to fit in 4 or 5 more ramp cards.
Yeah, I think he even played the or he didn't cast the Elish Norn, but he definitely had like 10 plus mana by the end of the game.
Yeah,
I think what happened was somebody stole the Elish Norn and he had Homeward Path out and then got it back. But then he played the 7 mana Emiria's Call, the MDFC one. He cast that at the end of the game.
It's just,
and like, that's not a card you cast unless you got enough mana.
Enough mana to cast it, yeah. 7 drops based. But no, yeah, there's a lot of decks like that one you're talking about that I think don't need to play as much ramp, or even maybe any.
Yeah, it's the flip side though to the run more removal thing, is if you're not interacting with everything, you need to go fast.
You need to go ramping.
Yeah, because the game's gonna end by, it's a turn 6 format,
Yeah, you gotta be ramping. If you're not doing anything, if you're not stopping people, you gotta be ramping. There's more to life. There's more to life than forests and ramp spells.
Yeah, like we've talked about a lot on the podcast, the idea of building around a mana curve and just spending your mana, and there's so many cool, awesome cards under 4 mana that you can play around with. I mean, Command Zone just recently completely stole one of our episodes.
Exactly.
Talking about cards better than Soul Ring. They called it, what was it, like best 1-drops?
Best 1-drops,
yeah. Like
or better than Soul Ring is much better title.
Yeah, like honestly, like, I mean, at least they had DJ on.
Ago. Yeah.
But still, like,
based.
You guys just can't get away with that. Like, we would never do something like that. All of our ideas are completely original.
I would never steal someone else's ideas.
Remember when we invented tier lists?
That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then everyone stole that idea.
It's really unfortunate.
And we stopped making them.
Yeah. We don't see the fruits of our rewards. We got our measly 500 subs, which I'm actually very happy with, but
yeah,
you know how it goes. There's no justice.
There's always more. We always need more. But
be nice.
Yeah. But
just like you always need more ramp.
More.
Like 10 plus pieces of ramp. I remember back in the day, like the Command Zone deck building template, they were like, yeah, about 10 pieces of ramp. And I remember like sticking to that for a very long time with my deck building, because I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Like that seems like a good idea. I'll stick to like my 10 card draw, my 10 ramp, because that sort of guarantees that you're seeing it in just about every game you play.
Well, back in the day, like I want to say like 2018, Command Zone was kind of gospel, if we're being honest here. They were the dudes, and they still are the dudes, but like they're
smart guys.
Yeah, but it's less It's less like everyone blindly following them. And I'm not saying that I'm not trying to throw shade or anything, but like back in the day, like 2018, 2019, myself and other people around me and around people would just be like, oh yeah, I do that because the command zone says that, right? And they weren't even, I'm not saying they were wrong about the things they were talking about, but it just was like that. That's how it was. Mm-hmm. And I think these days it's almost like what they do, like 10 to 12, 12 to 13. It's going up, the ramp spells numbers.
Yeah, and like you were saying, though, a bit of a tangent here, like about the commands. As much as we disagree with the command zone, I'd almost always say, like, even if we end up disagreeing with something that they say, somebody who's, like, or people who are that invested in a hobby, if they're putting forward ideas about the hobby or, like, suggestions, even if you disagree, they're saying what they're saying for reasons.
Yeah. As much shade as we'll throw, I'll say that I think the command zone is my most the podcast that I get the most enjoyment out of listening to, and the one that I think gets the least wrong. I think. I mean, we disagree with them on things, but I think a lot of other podcasts get more wrong in my eyes, or they have like a really weird view of the format that I super disagree with.
I think they've definitely benefited from kind of expanding their crew and the people that they work with, like getting that broadening of perspectives.
Yeah.
Like we've talked about before, and I keep saying that throughout this episode, but we're very self-referential because, like, honestly, like, we're probably one of the best Commander podcasts ever made, so, like, we kind of are gospel.
Yeah.
So, like, you guys just got to listen to, like, the backlog. You got to
We're
understand.
like a preacher reading the holy book of our episode 2 years ago.
In case you haven't listened to the episodes before, I got to plug them so we can, like, pad up our views on those older episodes.
Like when the Command Zone released their episode with the painter again because it didn't get enough views the first time.
But it's always good to get the most perspectives possible, I think, because you can end up in a very insulated play group in your Commander experience, and most people aren't so privileged to have that. A lot of people, I think, get their experience from going to game stores, or they occasionally meet up with, like, different friend groups, or go and meet new people, or they play on Magic Online or something,
or some sort of like play EDH Discord server, play on like webcam.
Yeah, but if you're in the same group all the time, you get kind of an idea that what you're experiencing is just kind of your normal, because why should you need to understand, like, the broader scope of Commander if this is all you have and, like, all you need? Because honestly, like, if you have that experiences, in a lot of cases, that is, like, the ideal form of Commander, because it's typically with people who are on the same page as you and that you enjoy playing with, whereas you go to a game store or something and oh my god, it's just, like, not possible sometimes. I immediately hit it off with people when I have, like, a game that just goes well and there's no issue. I'm just like, you know what? Thank you.
You the real ones.
You haven't made this a miserable experience for me. That is all I expect. That's all I want now.
Very based.
But yeah. Much ramp.
A lot of ramp.
And yeah, I just think you can say and you can believe that the format is like a turn 6 format or whatever, but really it's not.
Another thing that I want to say about the ramp situation is, like, I think you do a lot for yourself if you just play cards that aren't bad. Not to be, I know we're talking about optimization and how optimization might have gone too far, but, like, if you're playing, like, do nothing 5 and 6 drops versus, like, do something 5 and 6 drops, sure, you might need more ramp, because otherwise you're just like, oh yeah, I'm playing like a stupid 5 mana 5/5 that does something stupid on curve versus playing like a 5 mana 5 that does something on curve. Like, there's a difference between that. Yeah,
I guess in that way, like, ramp is kind of the thing that's compensating for certain cards being a little bit lackluster. Is like, if it doesn't matter if this card is a little bit subpar if I'm playing it 2 turns early.
Yeah, or if I'm able to get to my big 7 mana payoff spell, then that makes all of my other turn 4, turn 3, like, mediocre creature plays fine. Yeah, I get that.
And don't get me wrong, I love ramping into stuff that's, like, it feels good to, like, play something cool a turn early.
Yeah.
And a lot of my decks are kind of based around doing that. But there's definitely decks I have where I really only need the one ramp piece maybe like within that game,
sure.
and it doesn't have to be like right away. So like it's not, I don't need to be running more than 10 ramp cards. It's really like I need to have one, maybe like 2 or 3 mana ramp card within like the first 10 or 12 cards.
Yeah, first 4 or 5 turns of the game. Like you don't like if you draw like a Signet on like turn 4, like that's sufficient to ramp yourself. You don't need to have it on turn 2, I feel.
Yeah, unless you're building around a very specific curve, which I definitely have decks like that where I'm like, this is built around 4-drop, so I want to run every 2 mana rock that I can so that I guarantee like a specific play pattern happening.
All I'm saying is as long as the cards in your deck are good, and you're still going to be able to accomplish things in the game without excessive amounts of ramp. If the cards in your deck are really bad, you might need to be playing like a 8-drop on turn 5 or something to do anything, right?
I think there's also something to be said about the fact that ramp, I feel, is one of the things that people threat assess more strongly than like just about any other.
I'm guilty of that.
It's understandable. Like it makes sense to do that.
I might even be super wrong, honestly, but if I see someone has access to like 10 mana in a turn, I will like my knob for their threat level is, even if they have like 2 cards in hand, my knob goes way up, and it leads to a lot of feel bads, like playing with people and they're like I literally like have like almost nothing. I'm not even that scary. It's like, bro, you have access.
But
to
you
so
could
much,
have something.
But you could have something.
You can't know. Like like people can say like I literally don't have nothing. Like I have nothing good in my hand. But you can't know. So like you're right to like, because if they had the 2 right cards and they got 10 mana, they can play like anything.
Yeah.
At that point.
So that and so that is my that is another sick thing to ramp. If you have less mana, maybe you're less less scary. At least intuitively.
Yeah.
But you want to move on to our next thing?
We're going to move on from deck building advice to gameplay advice for optimization.
Yeah, so there's a lot of times in games where people will critique other people's plays, not based on their deck building, but based on like when, how, or what they do in the game. So, for example, some phrases you might hear in a game are, "Why'd you do that? Why did you do that? What are you thinking?" And
wouldn't you like to know?
If you could only peer into this mind, you would. I'd have to charge for that. Like, geez.
They're just like, I really don't understand that play, and you're like, wouldn't
expect you to understand it.
My thinking is beyond your comprehension.
Filthy mortal. Giga Chad. But other things people will critique. They'll be like, some people will be critiquing a lot of like stuff that really doesn't matter that much. Mm-hmm. Like if you crack a fetch land at like the wrong time, people will like say, "Oh, it'd be better if you wait until the end step to do that." And it's like, okay, bro, but chill. I think you're taking this optimization thing too far here.
You know what I would assert is the wrong time to crack your fetch land? When you're like presenting like you have something to do to somebody, and they're going to like do something, and you're just like, you want to like
in
hold
response,
up. You got your little like
fetch land.
in response. Hold up, I'm gonna crack my fetch land.
Okay, and then you wait for them to get their land, and you're like, anything else? Nope. Yeah, shut up.
Yeah, it's funny once maybe.
Yeah,
Please stop.
You get one ever. I'll give you one, and then you have to wait 3 years to get your chip back to do that. Your poker chip. People always be having to be dealing.
Yeah, you ought to be making some kind of deal every game, or you're not getting your full value.
You're not playing as optimally as you could. You're leaving value on the table. I think I've heard Josh say or something like that by not wheeling and dealing.
Yeah, because I think they would assert, very big proponents of politics in Commander would say that it's your biggest resource.
Go back and check out our politics episode. I don't remember what it's called, but that's a good one.
Politics Gone Wrong, I think.
Yeah, I think Gone Wrong. But that might give you an insight into how we feel about politics in general. But we don't hate politics overall.
Yeah, man, I've been trying to play around with a little bit more politics because, like I was mentioning earlier with my Tajik deck and trying to play differently, like I found a group of players that I really just get along with and where things really don't go wrong that often. So I've been trying to like be more engaged and like kind of have more fun, like goofy, wacky things happen.
Doing some suboptimal plays, doing some memes,
trying to make people feel more like involved in the game and have everyone have a good time. And politics can be good for that, but sometimes it's really just
people will suggest politics in such a way where you always have to be getting one over on somebody. You have to be getting the best deal you can. You know, it's like it's a bit like sometimes people will bring out politics at a very, I would say, offensive time in the game. So like if somebody is like winning the game pretty hard, and then someone's like trying to do something to them, and they start being like, "Hold on a sec, let's make a deal here. I'll kill you last if you don't do this."
Yeah, when they're like, "Oh, you better," like the winning players coming to the alliance of they're the arch enemy, and they're
coming to the alliance of the other three,
and you're just like, "Hey, if you don't join me, I'll kill you. I'll take you out of the game."
Yeah,
and it's like, if that happens to you, please just make them kill you. Be a hero.
Yeah, everyone wants you to be noble. You'll be renowned in the history books as the man who stood against evil.
But yeah, it's kind of a tool that especially like people will do this too. Also, when they have just like the way better deck at the table, still try and like break out the politics and be like, oh, like you don't want to do that. Like, oh, don't mess with me, or I'll counter your thing. And
it's like, bro, do you really need to like game the system this hard? You need to go this hard.
You really got to take like your odds of winning that game from like 70% to 90%.
Yeah.
It's like, I think that's kind of the idea of this whole episode is just people do a lot of the things that they do because they're not happy losing their fair share of games.
Yeah, I could see that. But I don't know, man. Just be when you go. My recommendation would be when you're trying to do politics, try to engage in politics that help your opponent as well as yourself. Don't try to just do something that helps yourself. Would be my recommendation. Now, sure, if you need, maybe there's situations where you need to like maybe get one over on someone every once in a while. Sure, whatever, fuck it. You know, it happens sometimes, right? But overall, try to not be like, I don't know. If someone would be like upset at what happened, it probably means it's a sign that's not great.
You also, if you're gonna try and do the crafty kind of get one over in like a very like didn't read the contract kind of way with people, you got to know how they're going to react to that before you do that. So if you go to like a stranger or something and you're like, oh, I won't like attack you with the next turn or something, and then you end up like comboing them out, like
or
like I won't kill you by doing this. And
I won't declare any attacks at you, and then they like attack with because Kalia need to be attacking defending player.
I believe so.
Okay, well, there's other effects to it. I'd be like, oh, I put into play an Emrakul attacking you. I mean, not Emrakul, it's banned. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like something like that. Like you're probably gonna look like the ass. Like it's like some people will appreciate that.
Yeah,
but most people probably won't. So just don't sometimes.
Well, they'll just never make a deal with you again, or they'll just like make sure the letter of the law is never what you want it to be.
Yeah, generally, I'm not a fan of doing things or engaging in practices in Commander that enforce the idea into the other players that they need to always be on edge and feel like if they miss anything or make the slightest mistake, they're going to be punished for it or made to feel stupid in some way.
Yeah.
Because then you have everyone taking super long turns, overthinking everything.
Everybody cracking their fetches on the end step before their turn, wasting time.
People aren't having as much fun with it. Like they're not like joking around or like goofing off, like talking about other stuff because they have to be laser focused on the game.
Yeah, it's a tense attitude, right?
Yeah, it's not fun.
Mm-hmm. Much less fun. Okay, well, on that similar topic, people really do be feeling like they have to disincentivize their opponents from either targeting them or attacking them. I'm sure everybody has experienced the player who complains every time anything happens to them, whether they get attacked, their creature gets killed, something like that.
And I think some people who do this would say like, oh, it's just politics. And I don't feel like it is. Because it's just putting out a bad attitude that makes, because a lot of Magic players are pretty socially anxious, myself included. So if somebody is acting just like completely miserable, it makes it really hard to do stuff to them if you just get the feeling they are going to lose it on you.
especially if it's like, I mean, I don't expect most people are doing this, but if you are a person who will complain about being attacked with the intent to disincentivize attacks, you're kind of a bad person, I feel. Maybe I shouldn't say that about your character, but it's not a good... It does not do anything for the game if you're going to be doing it with the intent to...
Yeah, especially if you're not being genuine. Like, I mean,
yeah,
it's still bad.
That's what I'm saying.
It's still bad if you are like genuinely angry if somebody's attacking you, but
if you're pretending to be angry or upset, like to get them not to counter your thing or whatever.
Like imagine if somebody acted like they were genuinely like sad, like if they like started like tearing up or like acting like
because they knew it would work or something, right?
And then like you pity them, like, because you're like a good person or something. You cut them a break because you think, like, wow, this really must mean a lot to them. And then, like, it gets back to their
So turn. Anyway, expropriate.
And yeah, the tears suddenly disappear, and they're just like, oh, yeah, I combo you out. Fucking sucker.
Yeah, it's like, oh,
and
God.
It's like, wow, you're...
Yeah.
And, I mean, that I haven't really, like, had...
Yeah, that's not
that
common,
happen,
don't worry. But I wouldn't... Oh, man, that would be a fucking black pill moment for me where I just start realizing how terrible the world is if that happened to me.
But really, I think I have interacted with some people that will get, like, upset throughout the game that they're being targeted or attacked, and they'll get angry about it and be like, oh, like, what's your threat assessment? Like, why are you attacking me? And then they'll end up winning the game, like, through some real, like, degenerate means at the end and just be like, well, I guess I got real lucky. You know, it's like, wow, like...
Or even worse, they'll be like, what's your deal, buddy? Why are you... Do you having a bad day? And they'll be like... And you'll be like, bro, it's not personal. It's nothing serious. It's just what's happening.
It's business.
Business as usual. I'm an attack. I got to attack.
You are my enemy.
Based. Yeah, I don't know. So, do you have anything else to say about that sort of, targeting, attacking kind of thing?
No, just, I mean, everyone gets salty, and that's okay. Like, you're not wrong. Like, if you have negative emotions and you feel them, like, you're not bad for feeling that way. It's how you choose to react to that feeling that really, like, defines the kind of person you are, I think.
Oh, you are owed your 25% of the table's salt. You are not owed 75% of the table's salt. Does that make sense? Like, you're allowed to be as salty as is representative of you. You can't be 3 times as salty as everyone else. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not a good look. It doesn't make for a good game.
Yeah, just don't do it. I mean, it's really like, I don't like the idea that Commander players feel like they ought to be incentivized to complain more. I think I remember showing you a tweet. I think it was from Chris Mooney, the current white color representative at Wizards for the Council of Colors. They were saying the thing I really think I need to get better at in Commander is just complaining more. Like when I use interaction or something, because like to try and like get that little goodwill. It's like they were kind of like, they were memeing. They weren't like being like, this is a genuine thing, but they're like, this is something.
It's an observation,
I see.
right? Like if you like use an interaction on something and you can be like, man, you guys should be helping me out here, kind of thing. It's like
being like, man, why do I have to do this all the time? Like, you guys got to run more removal.
It's like, no, you don't. Please don't do that.
Yeah, don't.
It's bad vibes.
It is bad vibes, and that's what we want to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the last thing I wanted to mention on here is just as far as optimization, or kind of like the why'd you do that sort of thing, is sometimes it's possible, like even if you don't do something, like if you do the wrong, like the quote wrong play and you're not aware of it, sometimes it just works. Sometimes it ends up being the right thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Like I think I've before in certain games like missequenced things in such a way that I wasn't able to like play an expensive creature at the right time, or like put out an artifact or enchantment, and then the next turn somebody plays a board wipe that would have destroyed it all.
And you're like, well, glad I'm stupid.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's better to be lucky than good.
Exactly. So that does happen a lot. So I mean, also if you're going to critique someone's play, realize that they don't have the same information available that you do. You know your hand, you know your deck. You might know other things about the game. They might know their hand. They might know other things. But like, you just have to understand that you guys are working. You each are working with like different building blocks onto how you're making your decisions, and the decision that you think is right, even the decision that you think is right from your perception of their perception, is not necessarily their perception.
Well, yeah, because you're not just carrying the information from this game.
Yeah.
Each person is carrying their lived experience with like every game of Commander they've ever played and what they've seen happen, because they could see a certain card and be like, well, I've seen this do that with this other card, and like it was really like degenerate and everything, and then you go to like destroy it or something. They're like, why'd you kill this? And you're like, well, it's because I've seen it before.
Because
like,
I think that's going to do something bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just be aware that other people are different. That's all. They have different thoughts than you.
Yeah, and like I was saying, like it just might end up being the right, because like say you have like your really strong like combo piece out on the board or something, but you've got like no board presence, like nothing in your hand or whatever, and they destroy it, and you're like, why are you targeting me? I have nothing going on right now. And the next turn, you draw your combo piece, and it's like, well, holy shit, they're Nostradamus over here.
They manifested it. You know, I would manifest that to happen just to make the player as mad as possible. Like I'd be like, if they draw their best card, you know, this next turn, it'd just be based. Imagine if you like took where you like took their turn, like you mind slaver them or something, and you like played like a top deck tutor, and you put the best card on the top of their deck for them, and then like on their upkeep you like destroyed the piece that it combos with or something, like just to trigger them.
Seems like a new goal. We should tell our friend Jesse about that. Plan.
I'm gonna start playing Mad Blight Mountain so I can make people shuffle their decks after I give it to them or something. Does it only let you shuffle your deck, or is it target deck?
Oh my God.
I don't. It's not. No, don't worry, it's not important.
We love the Mad Blind Mountain.
Yeah,
you got to go for the shuffle. Shuffle your library. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
You can't force the shuffle.
Dang, you got to go for like a donate it to them, mind slaver them, then do it. Okay, never mind. So I think that one of the last topics we have here to discuss today is the idea of how CEDH has changed people's perception on optimization. Because, you know, for one thing, I just want to say that CEDH has grown, in my eyes at least, has grown a lot in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, as opposed to, 10 years ago Commander. And not just like the amount of players that play it, but I think both the vocal like content creators and personalities. There's a lot of CEDH people on Twitter that are like big Magic personalities. They interact with other Commander personalities, stuff like that.
We got Shauna now working on the Command Zone.
Yeah,
CEDH. A resident CEDH player. They always bring out and like, look, we've got one.
Yeah, and like all the CEDH players on Twitter are like buddy with all the other Commander players, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm just saying like there's a wider lens on, or maybe a more focused lens on CEDH from like your average Magic player's perspective these days. And even people like Command Zone or other podcasts will acknowledge CEDH more often. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but I'm saying it does probably change how people view optimization in Commander.
Yeah, and I think the problem is CEDH being viewed as, like, if we have our power scaling of the Commander format, it being viewed as the top end of the Commander format. Like, these are the strongest decks in Commander. But really, like, we've probably talked about this before, and I think real CEDH players do see it this way. It's a separate thing. Like, it's not like you're playing a CEDH deck against casual Commander decks. That's just not something that should happen. So why look at it that way?
Why do we try to model our deck building and gameplay decisions off of CEDH, right? Like that. I firmly believe CEDH is a different format. Personally, I do believe that. Well, it's the same rules, but it's separate.
I'm almost to the point where I would think like there's some debate about like whether or not it should share the Commander ban list. Mm-hmm. I'd almost be like, no, like they should make their own ban list. Like if they think like CEDH players decide that would make a better gameplay experience for them, because really aside from like a few certain cards on the Commander ban list right now, I don't think it affects them like all that much. Like there's definitely a lot of strong cards.
Mostly
on
just the flash ban they did for CEDH.
I mean, you got the Moxen on there. You got like incredible, like the super powerful stuff that's banned for power level reasons. Mm-hmm. But that's not always why things are on the Commander ban list.
A lot of times it's for like social reasons or like the spirit of the format reasons, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And those things tend to not really apply to CEDH. I think, like you were saying, Eli, I have to think about it more, but I might be be in favor of a fragmentization of the format into Commander and CEDH. I might be in favor of that.
Well, yeah, because like not that like I want like this might sound like
I don't want to
like,
alienate,
like put them in their own little corner. Like we don't want them near us. We're
not sending CEDH players to concentration camps.
But really, if CEDH decks are not meant to interact with regular Commander decks, what's the point? Like,
yeah. And I think people, like I was said earlier, people will look to CEDH to inform and optimize their casual decks. And I feel like there's just like, I can't enumerate on them all, but I feel like there's like thousands of disconnects there that you're kind of missing. Things that just like make that not translate one-to-one.
Yeah, to me it's kind of just like you're playing the different games with the same pieces. Mm-hmm. It's like solitaire or like poker or something. Like
that's a good example.
You're using the same cards.
Solitaire, spider solitaire. Different kind. Yeah, I get you. But I don't know, man.
But it's just really not like if you have like your regular Commander deck that's like good, but like can't cut it with CEDH, and you're like, well, this isn't strong enough. I can't deal with like somebody's CEDH deck, and you think you have something wrong with you. It's no, you don't.
Yeah, like I do firmly believe it to be different, a different format almost. And like you were saying, we don't dislike CEDH. I've played a little bit, not nearly enough to be authority on it, but it's not. It's just not the same thing. And nothing against CEDH. I'm sure it's very fun and a great format, but it's different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, you had an interaction that I think you want to talk about.
Yeah, that's true. I think that recently, meaning the last couple years, as opposed to in like a long time ago, I feel like CEDH players are coming out more, so to speak. The closeted CEDH players.
They're crawling out of the ground, out of their little mole man caves.
Yeah. In my opinion, it used to be the case that CEDH players playing casual people wouldn't often like bring up CEDH like a lot because there's not the same like nothing wrong with like talking about it, but I feel like I've seen multiple times where there's like a new Commander player, like a new player, and the CEDH player, the resident CEDH player at the table just has to get them into CEDH, just has to show them their turn 0 win. That's what someone did here. Like, this guy barely knows how to play Magic, and you're trying to show him like the most powerful thing possible. I feel like, I'm not saying that like CEDH is like a bad thing or anything like that, but I feel like you're kind of tainting their expectations of regular Commander.
Yeah, you're giving them like this view of what the format is, like when they really like don't know that.
Because the CEDH player doesn't often aren't usually super explicit about how like this is pretty much only like a CEDH thing, like this isn't what you're going to see, and it's not like they're doing it intentionally. I just think it's like it's a byproduct of that. It's kind of like an early indoctrination kind of thing, and then that person doesn't end up getting into CEDH because either it's like really expensive or it's hard to find players, or I know you can proxy and stuff in CEDH, but like it's just, yeah, like you were saying, like I was saying and you were saying, I think it does kind of like it can create some toxic casual players.
I think we knew a person at
I know who you're talking about,
who was a pretty new player, and I don't think he had the experience of somebody like stomping on him with a CEDH deck, like the pub stomping thing, which I have seen happen in other situations, which is also like really bad. But I think
online content and stuff.
Yeah, I think through like online content, like he started like seeing like the wider world of Commander and like CEDH, and so he decided to try and make one of his Commander decks into a quote CEDH deck.
Yeah,
and then would like pull it out and like kind of like talk about it like that, and it really wasn't that great. It definitely wasn't a CEDH deck.
It was weird, man.
Glasses of Urza.
Urza's sunglasses or glasses of Urza. Yeah.
Look at the top card or look at somebody's hand for like tap it.
It's like tap, look at somebody's hand or something like that. And it's like, it's kind of like an amalgamation of like half CEDH deck, half like 2 out of 10 deck. And it's like, I just, man, bro, like, you are you're a Chimera, bro. You're a Chimera right now in CEDH and regular Commander.
Like a new Commander player, like somebody who maybe doesn't have the best deck, just thinking like, oh, you know what I need to do to win more, or like make a better deck? Just put some random combos in here.
Yeah.
That's how I'm going to do it. It's like, maybe not.
Maybe not. But yeah, man, that's just, it's like I just want to emphasize again, nothing really against CEDH, just a little bit of venting here, and I think it does kind of hurt people's perception of non-CEDH sometimes.
Yeah, I think...
it can, at least.
Be careful with new players, like, just make sure to preface that, like, the power level disparity thing, and how it's really not something they should be running up against, or, like, make it clear, like, if they are playing against somebody who does something like that, that's not the norm, and that shouldn't, like, they shouldn't be okay with that.
Yeah. Very based. Yeah, and that I think that's all we had for CEDH. I do have one more thing that I wanted to mention just very briefly, and that's the idea of game theory and optimization, because when you're... I just want to rant for a second here. When you're looking to optimize a game, especially a game that's, like, social and has, like, other people in it, you're going to have to be, like... You're going to have to optimize with, like, the meta in mind. And as you optimize, and as other people optimize, your optimization strategies will need to change to adapt to that new optimization. And as that, new optimization is changed, you're going to have to optimize again and again to adapt to the ever-changing landscape. And this is something in, like, programming and stuff. It's called recursion. And it pretty much means that, like, the result has to feed into the input every time. Mm-hmm. And you kind of have this infinite, like, ever-changing optimization of never, like, really reaching the desired result. So it's kind of like it's kind of like just
sort of a feedback loop.
It's a feedback loop, and, like, you're never gonna get there. You're never gonna get what you're searching for. It's a hopeless quest of perfect optimization.
Yeah, I've probably talked about this before, but whenever a new set would come out, I'd have certain decks where I was always trying to optimize them as hard as I could, because I felt like, oh, these are my decks where I gotta, like, really show off or, like, prove something. And so a new card would come out and be like a good card, and I'd slot it into the deck, take out something older, but every time a new set would come out, the card that I'd cut for the next newest card, it would be the last thing I just cut out, and eventually I started to learn, all these old cards in the deck that I, like, don't ever cut out, like, that's because they're just good enough.
Yeah.
And so the deck is fine, so unless there's something just really, like, I don't try and, like, make changes into my decks for the sake of optimization that much anymore. It's more like, oh, this card is fun, I want to try it out. Because you're really, like, your deck's probably fine.
Yeah, it's probably
a lot of the best cards in Magic, like, people will talk about power creep, and there definitely are cards being put out that are
a lot of
way stronger than old cards. But a lot of the best cards in Magic already exist and aren't going to be replaced.
It's a very good point. And there are so many... There's also so many newer good cards and older good cards that when another really broken card comes out, like... How broken is it compared to what you already put in your deck, right? Like, a lot of the cards you have are great.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you're probably always, like, with a very well-tuned deck that you've had for years, I don't know if, like, if you're trying to, like, optimize to 100%, you're never, aside from, like, maybe, like we were talking about, like, CEDH decks, they'd probably say, like, they're optimized to 100%.
Yeah. You're already in the 80s or 90s.
But if you're, like, in the 90s and you're really, like, you're at, like, 94% optimized and you're, like, always trying to, like, push up to that 100, you're really probably not gonna get there.
And you're also probably not gonna get what you want out of it. Like, you might be, having less fun by going from 94 to 95 versus 94 to 93, but, like, more fun stuff to do.
Yeah, or sometimes you're gonna accidentally make it worse because you just can't know, like, what you're gonna run up against.
I would drop 2 percentage points to, like, increase the fun by, like, 20%. That'd be awesome. That'd be fun. That's a fucking that's an easy trade-off for me.
Yeah.
And for some people, I think that's not an easy trade-off.
Yeah, I think that's just what you got to go with now. Like I was talking about my Shadrix deck earlier. That's just a deck where now I don't put cards in there to make it better. I put cards in there because, this is a cool card that looks fun.
Oh yeah, man.
I want to have some fun.
Boom. Oh, Rakshasa Death Dealer. That looks cool. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Debaser. Yeah.
Oh, Debaser. Sorry, Death Dealer is something else, I think.
That card's also that's the Golgari one that's just like a 2/2 that pumps itself.
Never mind.
But I used to love that guy. He's awesome.
Base. Yeah, the Debaser.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's a cool card. It's not the best in its
exactly.
class, but it's awesome.
Exactly.
That's fun. But yeah, I think that's about what we have for this topic. Move into the outro here. Anything that you want to talk about? I mean, of course, thank you guys for sticking with us. I know we've been kind of busy and stuff lately, but hopefully you get back on the wagon.
I think we're getting the fire back. We have some ideas for other types of videos, which I think would be fun to do because the podcast thing, and this is maybe this could be our little end step, so to speak, is I'm growing a new appreciation for other Commander podcasts, specifically the Command Zone, considering I think they're at over 500 episodes now.
Crazy, yeah.
It's hard to think of things to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And it definitely helps when you have set review content or
so much
deck reviews, looking over deck lists and stuff like that, those kind of series. I don't particularly enjoy that content. Set reviews are okay.
But pre-con upgrades, not a fan.
So yeah, we don't want to do stuff like that. And sometimes there's certain things that we probably repeat pretty frequently because I think there's some topics in Commander or in this podcast specifically that are kind of the building blocks of the things that we will be talking about in the future and the things that we do talk about.
Yeah, I always worry about repeating myself because I know I do it a lot in these podcasts. I'm like, oh, I mentioned that 5 episodes ago. But really, that's okay. Like you said, they're building blocks. They're important fundamentals.
Yeah, and I mean, if it's better we have our things like that than just ha ha, white bad. It's pick your poison. It's one or the other.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Command Zone, for going for 500 episodes and still having new content aside from the deck reviews and the set reviews and
newfound appreciation. Yeah, like you said.
That is impressive. I'm actually thinking of a video or a video that we could do, Spencer. This would be a real psychological torture, I think. I probably floated this to you before, but I was thinking I could go through and listen to every Command Zone, and then we could be do a video I listened to every Command Zone,
and here's what I learned.
But yeah, that would take a long
that'd be very
time.
difficult, and
it would be interesting to see how things have changed and really go back and observe that, because I know that things have changed with their opinions.
It'd be interesting to do an archaeological study of take notes for everything. Here's what and how their opinions and their way of doing things changes. But it'd be a lot of work.
I'd like to pinpoint the moment where they switched out the Jimmies.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because that's you ever hear the Paul McCartney is dead theory?
Yeah, I'm familiar.
There's also the Jimmy is dead theory.
Yeah,
which I'm putting out there.
I think the real Jimmy is still alive, living in South America, just like Tupac.
Yeah, they're probably pals.
Yeah.
They got a whole community of people down there.
Yeah, of dead politicians and all the people. Very based. But no, it would be cool to see. But on another note, we are. I'm going to sound like a broken record here because I've said this on the end of other podcast episodes. We are planning to do some other kinds of content. Maybe I don't want to spoil it, but we got some things in the works. They take a while oftentimes, so apologies for that. But if you're sticking with us, I appreciate it.
All I'm saying is yes, we have been gone for a while, but in this instance, we are like the phoenix rising from the ashes, stronger and better than ever before, because we've gotten some particular comments lately, and I love positive reinforcement. Usually that's been what drives me, but honestly, spite is a good motivator. I'll say that much.
Based.
So yeah. Look forward to it.
All right.
Well, yeah, I've been Elijah Samuelson.
And I've been Spencer Cook.
Thank you guys for listening.